So, in today's video, I want to talk to you a little bit about the idea of co-regulation, specifically for dismissive avoidant attachment styles. And the reason I want to talk about this topic is that not only could this be a huge blocker for dismissive avoidance in terms of actually being able to move out of the power struggle stage and into future stages of relationships so that they can thrive, but on top of that, this will make a whole lot of things make sense in terms of why relationships can feel draining, exhausting, frustrating if you are a dismissive avoidant. And this might even come as a surprise to you at the end, where we talk about how you may be confusing the inability to co regulate with a profound need for autonomy or freedom. So, first and foremost, what is co-regulation? Well, co-regulation is essentially this idea that all mammals essentially attune to one another's nervous systems and harmonize. But there are different types of co-regulation. So we have this harmonization that occurs that essentially all mammals do. You can actually think of this as attunement. And if we were to break it down, you can look at it as the idea or concept that when we are in the company of other people, we pick up on different cues, social cues, emotional cues, body language cues, micro expression cues that essentially tell us the emotional state of another person. And to a certain degree, we take some of this emotional state on. So we have this harmonization sort of step when it comes to co regulation, but then there's another step. And this next step is this ability to actually behaviorally co regulate with someone else. And what I mean by this is that if we see somebody is in distress, so let's say we can tell their arms are crossed, they're frowning, they're frustrated, they're in a state of distress. Behavioral co regulation would mean that we sort of are able to go out of our way to change our behaviors to try to help them modify their nervous system state. So we may give them a hug, we may give them some encouragement, some reassurance, some affirmation. Like we would actually change our behaviors to help them adapt in terms of their nervous system state. And this is something that happens in interdependent relationships. Now, when we think of, counterdependent relationships or, the dismissive avoidant when it comes to sort of their need to go away from interdependency as a means of protecting their desire for freedom, what you'll see is that dismissive avoidants are often very put off by the idea that we should change our behaviors to help somebody else modify how they're feeling. But, we're not talking about codependency. We're not talking about making ourselves exclusively responsible for somebody else's feelings and vice versa. We're talking about that when we have close and loving relationships, in interdependent relationships, which is actually the ability to be healthy and stable and secure in our relationships, we can and should go out of our way to various degrees to try to help other people soothe. It doesn't mean we're responsible for their feelings exclusively. It doesn't mean we're the only ones soothing. But in an interdependent relationship, there's sort of these two branches. One branch is I am responsible for my own feelings. Another branch is I would love if you can also share in the care for my feelings at the same time. So we can do things like be mindful or conscientious about somebody's pain points. We can give them a hug. We can be reassuring. We can ask them what's wrong, be present with them, bounce ideas around to help solve problems. And yes, it doesn't mean that we're exclusively responsible to solve somebody else's challenges, but we can do our part to be there for people in those interdependent ways. If when we look at the idea of interdependency, if you don't have the bandwidth to be able to do that, then that's one thing you can say, I'm not available right now to have this conversation. Let's try again next week or let's try again later. Like it doesn't mean that like you have to be there to co-regulate with somebody all the time, but it is something that we can do. Now, here's the kicker, okay? The biggest challenge for dismissive avoidance is actually not that they may struggle in varying degrees to co regulate with other people, right? They may not struggle to help somebody else co regulate as much as they actually struggle to allow people to co regulate with them. So, dismissive avoidance, while there's in this sort of counterdependency space of a DA, they can be a little bit rejecting of this ability to really regulate with other people. At the same time, on the flip side, They often don't want to be seen or known or let people in or share their flaws or their fears or their emotions with other people, meaning that they're even more blocked in allowing other people to be there for them, to help and support them around their insecurities and their fears. And I'm not talking about when people go out of their way to try to like win a DA over and they people please. I'm talking about the dismissive avoidance actual inner world, the things that are actually causing them distress, and how they may really be struggling to receive support on those things because they don't let those things be known or be seen. Now, when we sort of extrapolate this out and we look at some of the effects of struggling with co-regulation, one big thing you'll see is dismissive avoidance may constantly, and this is sort of like the big peak point of this video that I want you to pay attention to, the dismissive avoidant may push people away and actually take space from people in their lives and spend a lot more time alone. Yes, to maintain freedom. And yes, they do care about their freedom and autonomy and independence. But at a root cause level, I believe one of the biggest contributors from a root cause perspective to this huge focus on protecting their freedom and autonomy all the time is actually protecting their emotional bandwidth because they don't know how to regulate themselves well in the company of other people, because they don't know how to let people in and regulate alongside other people. And so part of this like need to protect their space and their freedom is also this need to protect their bandwidth because they don't know how to regulate with others. And so I think this really goes hand in hand here, where if we are not able to recognize this and do some of this re-regulation work while in the company of other people, it's going to cause you as a dismissive avoidant, or if you're learning about this from the loved one of a dismissive avoidant perspective, to constantly need to push other people away. And at its core, underneath that even, we could make the argument that dismissive avoidants really struggle to accept themselves because of this big defectiveness wound that they're carrying as a result of not being attuned to in childhood. If you watch this channel, without going too far down the rabbit hole right now, you'll see that one of the biggest core wounds of dismissive avoidance is I am defective. And where this actually comes from at its root is in childhood. If you don't have proper attunement or co-regulation modeled to you and taught to you from caregivers, perhaps because they are emotionally unavailable, then you learn to think, okay, I'm yearning for this attunement. I'm yearning for this care, because we literally are wired for co-regulation and attunement. And when it keeps feeling like it's not there and rejected, often the dismissive avoidant at a subconscious level makes it mean there must be something wrong with me that I can't get this need met. And so as a result of carrying this idea about themselves very deeply subconsciously, they fear being seen, being known, and it allows this vicious cycle to stay in creation. It allows the dismissive avoidant to say, okay, something's wrong with me. I don't want to be seen. I don't want to have anybody else really deeply know me because it feels too vulnerable and I'll just get rejected anyways. So let me keep people at bay. Whenever I need to regulate myself, I'll do that by keeping space to others. But it refeeds this vicious cycle where they struggle to co-regulate. So then they struggle to let people in. And then as a way of trying to regulate themselves, they actually have to take a lot of space from other people to protect their emotional bandwidth to re-regulate, because they don't do that with people. So they don't feel accepted. So they don't want to get seen. So they keep people at bay. So then they're still not seen. So then they still don't feel accepted. So, and you can just see how this goes around and around and around. So when we look at this, something that's really important to realize is a lot of dismissive avoidance would actually feel more comfortable allowing people in and spending more extensive time with people and allowing people in their space if they could master co-regulation. And by mastering co-regulation, they would also put themselves in a position where they can move out of the power struggle stage of relationships, because so much of how to move beyond the power struggle of relationships that we all go through is to actually get into a position where you can let people in, let yourself be seen, be known, and allow people to behaviorally co-regulate with you. So allow people to adjust their behaviors to help soothe you and vice versa. And so, when we can do this and be vulnerable and be open and let ourselves be seen and learn to regulate well in the company of other people, we're going to actually have more successful and more thriving relationships. Now, there's a lot I can say in terms of how to actually do this. I'll give a couple key points. If you do want to check out for free for 14 days, just for a limited time, a whole co-regulation series here, I'll put a link down below about co-regulating for each attachment style and some of the different pain points, challenges, how to help other people co-regulate, but within healthy boundaries. So we're not fully responsible for their feelings, but we can be there to support them. And it's sort of a webinar series about this with slides with all this information. But some early things to do is, number one, to ask for acceptance. Okay. So, if somebody's critical, the dismissive avoidant is like really seeking acceptance at a deep level. And when they feel truly accepted by somebody, it doesn't mean you can't like communicate needs and things like that. But when they feel accepted and they feel seen and empathized with, they let their guard down and they let people in. And then when they let people in, they can be a little more vulnerable and open. And in doing that, they then allow themselves to feel like they can be themselves around the company of others. And when they can be themselves in the company of others, it's much easier to co-regulate because it's like, okay, you can truly see and know me and I can be myself. So if I need to, do whatever I need to do to self-soothe, whether that's watching a television show or just taking some time out to do whatever it is, you can have somebody in the room at the same time with you. So, I feel like I'm kind of going down so many rabbit holes, but dismissive avoidants often have these creature comforts, these sort of self-soothing behaviors they take part in, and like they protect them. I don't want other people to see them in them, even though those are things that most people do anyways. So whether it's like spending time on social media or playing video games or watching a television show, G kind of protects that as if that's this, terrible sort of sinful thing that they're doing that they have to hide out over here. But when somebody feels like they can truly let their guard down and be seen and be known, they end up letting people into their space while they watch that television show or play the video game because they feel this sense of acceptance. And in doing that, they also take a step towards being able to co-regulate because they're opening themselves up to sort of be their natural selves around other people. So it requires vulnerability. It requires some exposure work. It requires doing this in stages and also understanding like that these are big needs to feel accepted, to feel seen, to feel empathized with as a dismissive avoidant. So I feel like I can talk about this for so much longer, but if you want to do a much deeper dive, you can check out the co-regulation webinar series for all the different attachment styles, how it affects everybody using that 14-day free trial link down below. It actually gives you access to all of PDS for free for that limited time. So I hope you enjoy. And that is it for today. If you're enjoying this channel, please consider liking, sharing, subscribing. Thank you so much for watching and stopping by, and I can't wait to see you in future videos.